I'm Pardis Noorzad. I'm the founder of General Folders, and today I want to talk about how and why cross-company data exchange happens. Why does data leave the boundaries of one company into another, and how is this done? I worked as a data scientist, data engineer, ML engineer, and a manager of data teams at various companies across various industries. And over, my team and the DevOps team and the security and legal teams, engineering teams, we were all involved with resolving this one challenge. Businesses exchange data for a variety of reasons. That's how they collaborate. And they do this quite often. But to make this more clear, I'd love to go through some scenarios outlining why businesses exchange data. One example that I've seen over and over, and it's kind of similar to the first job I held at a retail analytics and AI platform company, is that AI companies, analytics companies, prefer SaaS deployment over on-prem deployment. They need to bring data to from their customers to their own warehouse. And here are some of those reasons. It's simpler, all the reasons why any kind of company would rather SaaS deployment over anything else. Also, in the case of AI, there's additional hardware optimizations that might be necessary. And so, an AI company might work with a retailer and they need to transfer transaction data and return data. Retailers might also want to send return data to their suppliers or their inventory data to their logistics partners, or marketing data to their advertisers. This would include kind of customer demographics, purchase history, that sort of thing. In the banking and financial services and insurance sector, an AI company, for example, one building a fraud detection engine, similar to work I've done at Paytm, might be working with insurance companies, and the data would include policy information, customer information, claims data. Banks might exchange data with credit bureaus to assess the credit worthiness of borrowers, or lenders exchange data with appraisers, determine the value of a property, and so on. And my last job, we wanted to work in healthcare. We wanted to work with a real estate analytics company to find out where to buy our next clinics. And so we send booking and appointments data to that company as we kind of identified new areas for new clinics. Healthcare providers also work with pharmacies to send prescriptions, patient information, medication, refill information. They also exchange data with labs in order to send and receive results. This data includes patient information, test orders, and things like that. So now that we kind of have seen some of the motivations for data exchange between different organizations and companies, let's go through some of these methods that companies use. I've had a lot of conversations with companies about this topic, and so this is kind of an overview of those conversations. And the goal is to kind of enumerate some of the very many methods that companies use to exchange data and what they have available today. And here's one of the most common ways that companies exchange data. So they extract kind of data in CSV file as a CSV file, and then set up an SFTP server or a Dropbox, a Box, or send this through Slack or Gmail. But like, regardless of that kind of intermediary you use, the steps are similar in that kind of data is extracted from the cloud where it usually resides as a CSV file. then moves into an SFTP server, Box or Dropbox or Gmail or something like that. And then the other side of the transaction, the other company needs to download that CSV file and then also find a way to upload it back into the cloud data warehouse, data lake, or wherever they may need that data. And there's also other ways, some companies set up an, S3 bucket. But there are cases where one company wants to control the end-to-end pipeline, and so they will ask for their customers' credentials to connect directly to their kind of S3 or their database, and to build and monitor that end-to-end pipeline themselves. Usually more kind of tech-savvy, newer companies will do something like this, and then even set up Debezium, do log-based CDC replication from, let's say, a database into a warehouse and things like that. Another very popular method for data transfer today is if you're usually a SaaS vendor where you know kind of what data your customers want, you will expose an API, and there's a lot of benefits to this because customers can choose which data they want out of all that's available. And there are standards to APIs everyone can implement and knows. APIs are database independent and tech independent, which is great. They're open, not tied to a vendor. An API is a contract, and so there is no need for additional description of schemas and things like that, which is also great. And then APIs are testable by both sides. So both sides know, one, what they're sending, they know what they're receiving, they know what to expect. Additionally, as a kind of SaaS vendor, you can also, or SaaS vendor partner, you could also implement an API to pull data from vendors. Sorry, I missed. Okay. Kind of talked about the, sorry, I missed my train of thought. But SaaS vendors expose APIs, and then, when you're kind of working with those SaaS vendors and you want access to your data, you can implement those APIs and pull that data. And then there are tools right now, ETL tools, that help you pull this data in a very reliable way. You can also move data out of the warehouse and into operational systems like MailChimp and NetSuite using reverse ETL tools as well. And so this is, again, another kind of in the opposite direction of still using APIs for data transfer. Yet another method that companies use for data transfer is by exposing an SDK or building an SDK that your customers can implement in their apps and things like that. It's not easy. Integrations take time, but the data is very reliable. Every change kind of in the SDK requires the app to be tested, deployed, and shipped again. And then there's these new methods of sharing data where you're not actually transferring data, but only exposing a view of the data. But it works in specific scenarios. It's good for sharing data when it's for read purposes only, and you can do this on Snowflake and Redshift. The great thing about it is that it's instant access because there's no movement, and data never leaves your servers, so you can get access to usage metrics as well. And you can restrict access whenever you need to. And one example of this is companies like Stripe right now use Snowflake and Redshift to share their data without the need for API integration. Of course, they have their APIs available as well, but they are offering more data through these, which is probably kind of simpler for them as compared to managing and maintaining their API, ensuring that it's up to date with all their newest features and things like that. Salesforce, Segment, Amplitude all use this zero copy, zero ETL kind of data sharing strategy as well. And this is kind of a diagram by AWS Redshift that they use for Stripe and their customers. And then when you're on AWS, you can use federated queries in Redshift and query and analyze data across your Redshift and S3 and other places that you have. And then one really cool application of data sharing is data marketplaces. It's a one-to-many kind of share, and with AWS Data Exchange, data vendors can provide easy, secure access to the data and reach AWS customers. And consumers get read access through Redshift sharing capabilities and so on. Snowflake has a very similar kind of feature as well. So we talked about these kind of available tooling and methods that companies use. And now fragmentation aside, in that, there's all these various methods when you're faced with a data exchange task. We want to see kind of what are the challenges of these existing kind of tools and scenarios. So CSV suppresses type information that needs to be inferred later and when data is being uploaded back to the database. SFTP, has limits and so sometimes requires chunking and things like that. It's also hard to keep data up to date. You need to manage that logic. When a row changes, of something that you sent before, it's hard to communicate that and for knowing that your kind of client can kind of manage those updates in the right way. And there's also no data validation or handshake that happens, and so we see over and over people say, hey, I received PII I didn't ask for, and now I have to find a way to scrub it or things like that. Or I sent PII by accident. I send data from another customer to this customer or things like that. Sometimes also, some customers ask for obscure formats, and so you need to do additional transformations to get to those new formats. Ultimately, as we talked about, this method is kind of like throwing data over the fence. You really don't know what's happening at the other side. You don't know when that other company has time to build the rest of the pipeline. How will they manage it? How will they ensure data integrity and security and things like that? And you don't know if that data has been received on time. You just don't have visibility over the end-to-end pipeline. One story here is that we needed to send data to one of our kind of partners, and they said that on their side they have a manual process to download the data from the SFTP and upload to their warehouse, and they can only do that once a month. But in the kind of interim, they said that the exec team needs access to metrics, top-level metrics. They need that to be updated, pretty regularly, daily, hourly, and things like that. And so We would need to create dashboards for all their top line metrics, and so we're kind of like acting as their kind of data arm in the interim until they would get access to their raw data at the end of the month. With SFTP, speed is a challenge. It's very difficult to kind of come up with SLAs just because of what we just spoke about. And so because of that speed issue, we talked about how some companies share their credentials and say, okay, this other kind of client will build out the entire end-to-end pipeline, they'll monitor it and kind of have control over the speed and all of that. However, deciding on the tech to use, how to connect to the database, who will build the pipeline, who gets access to what, and those things kind of take some time. The other thing is only one side now has full visibility, and the other side kind of has no visibility over what is happening with their data. And so they don't control when data is sent, how it is sent, or anything like that. And then the nature of partnerships really changes a lot, and so you kind of need to maintain all of these various pipelines over time as well. New data needs to be sent, old data needs to be revoked. Maybe the partnership is, for whatever reason, severed, and now you need to remember to make sure all of those pipelines are off. Another challenge is pricing. Now that you have two companies in the mix, which side of the transaction should be paying for what? It's not always going to be the same. It's not always the sender who pays for things. It's not always the data consumer who's paying for everything. And so with this approach, let's say in credential sharing, it's not really clear who should pay for egress costs and who should pay for the pipeline and other things. And so there's also, security issues. As we talked about, you really don't know kind of what access, what are areas that your partner needs access to, and so kind of coming to an agreement over that will take time and require a lot of trust. And then, also, what are the challenges with APIs? It's a really great method, but there are some challenges. Not all data consumers expose an API, and connectors for all possible APIs under the sun don't exist. And so, and it's also difficult to manage costs as well, because if if you require data transfer over SFTP, one side has to spend the cost of actually exposing the API. Another side has to pay for ETL kind of tools to implement that, and there's no other way to kind of change this kind of dynamic. And then SDKs also require a long time to both kind of build and then actually implement as well, and then there's not always support for all programming languages. With zero ETL tools, it's temporary access. It's not great for all scenarios, and usually works across the same cloud, same region. And so sometimes you need to transfer data to the same region to be able to use some of those kind of sharing capabilities. And then with marketplaces, again, similar reasons as before, but also it kind of really is built for the one-to-many use cases, and it's not clear on like who should pay for that transaction. When you have all of these pipelines, auditing is a challenge. pipelines all over the place. If you ever need to audit, it's a lot of work. And because there's all of these methods, there's this, there are too many options, and it takes so much time to, set up a pipeline, and the sales process, and this kind of slows down the sales process and onboarding and time to value. What should we look for in a solution for this? We'd want something with end-to-end coverage that manages the entire pipeline. We want something that's cloud agnostic and tech agnostic. We want a solution that makes it easy to monitor and test all pipelines and manage them in one place. We want it to be easy to calculate costs and do accounting, and also, charge the right side. A good solution should have an easy way to manage evolving contracts. It should maintain a ledger of all transactions that happen. And most important, a good solution would make it easy for companies to stay secure and compliant. And finally, easy to set up, because we hear over and over companies lose sales because integrations take too long. And if this stuff resonates, I'd love to talk further, and also wanted to mention that we're now part of Techstars, have almost less than a month to go, and let's connect. Please follow General Folders on the various apps. We'd love to talk more. Thank you.
Thank you, Pardis. So we do have 1 minute if anyone has a question.
So very briefly, you end your node with what your wish list is. Do you have any clues as to what the solution is?
Yeah, thank you for asking. We're building this solution, and it's working on general folders for B2B data exchange to manage all of this, the things that I've mentioned. We connect to both sides of the transfer and replicate data on a cadence, add testing and validation as well on both sides of the transfer.